So.
Oh no, I haven't actually. What do you mean by breakup rooms? These sessions?
Yeah, the sessions, yeah.
Oh no, I wasn't participating. I was busy with this, with checking up on the lawyer, on Thomas Huhr.
Yes.
Regarding the association. So I'm so sorry. Who was it? Maybe I should contact her.
Yes, please contact her, because now that you have everyone. Dear versus virus incubatees, dear watchers on YouTube, dear people who are watching us on LinkedIn, welcome once again to the Versus Virus Incubator and particularly to the Lunch and Learn. As you know, today we are going to get into the head of a venture capitalist. How exciting is that, right? So today we have a fellow Bulgarian. His name is Daniel Laurer, who is going to let you into his own head. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you, Bilana, for the invitation to be here. I look forward to sharing whatever little contents of my head I actually have with the audience today.
You're being really humble. I appreciate that. So on that note, would you like to take it from here? And I would like to invite the participants who have joined us live on Zoom to get ready to interact. Is that okay, everybody? Thumbs up? Okay, so take it away from here, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Biliana. First of all, thank you guys for attending this session. My name is Daniel Laurer, and I have been around technology for the better part of my life. I have started my career as a coder. I've moved to sales. I've established a number of startups. Some have been successfully sold. Others have been a miserable failure. I've been a part of a large exit. I've been part of a corporate. And now I have switched in the past 3 years towards being a venture capitalist, which essentially means funding other founders to fulfill their dreams. Now, as a caveat, I might revert to coding one day. But in my line of work now as one of the 3 managing partners in Brightcap Ventures, we've been pretty busy over the past few years funding companies that we think can make a difference. You've probably seen some of the names. They're coming from different verticals. They're all over the world, essentially, predominantly Europe and the US, because these are the key arenas where European originating founders have a chance of success. And today I am planning to talk with you not about those startups and not so much about your startups either. Our talk today will be focused on me. And it's focused on me because not me personally, but me as representing a breed of human beings called venture capitalists now. And from our quite intensive interactions with startups over the past years, and it's approaching about 1,000 companies we've reviewed, I've come to the conclusion or intuition that many of startups will benefit greatly if you can understand how venture capitalists actually see what you pitch on the other side. Very often founders are very centered around their value prop, which is perfectly all right. That's how it should be. But whatever you have to offer has to be packaged in a way that resonates with the mindset of a venture capitalist. Therefore, my warmest wish from today's session is that you understand how we think when you're pitching any idea. You are very, very welcome to interrupt with questions. Put them in the chat. I've now had it open here, or just say it verbally. We'll try to emulate the interactiveness of a live session, which I deliver in a similar format quite often, because this is a quite unique opportunity for you to understand how we see the world. In normal circumstances, if you had interactions with DC, this is not something you're going to experience in a candid way. So I really invite you to make the best use of it. That's part of the reason why I did not deliberately prepare any slides today because I want you to be focused in this very short period of time to understand how we feel about everything we do. And that will actually require you to listen and ask questions and look at the very, very limited visuals that I'm going to present to you. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Anyone who wants to disconnect at this point and go for lunch? Okay, let's move on. Now, the very, 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 very basics of venture capital. Can you see my white screen? Now I need to share it from here. Is it sharing? Sharing. Share screen. Yeah.
We already have one question. Miguel is asking, what are verticals?
What are verticals? Verticals
That's right.
are, yes, verticals are, it's a fancy name for various types of industries. So retail, financial, insurance, industry, these are all verticals. Whereas horizontals is what we refer to as the technologies. Is it mobile? Is it SaaS? Is it database? Is it Python? That's what a horizontal would be. So now that we're talking into basics, let's look at the basics of what venture capitalist is and take it one step back. Let's see what a venture capital fund actually is. And if we're talking about a venture capital fund, let's talk about something even more basic, such as what exactly is a fund. Lovely. Oh, I can see that you can see the red box that I drew on the screen. So essentially a fund is a pile of money. Now this pile of money has a particular characteristic. This pile of money is not our money. If it were our money only, it would be a family office. So a fund is essentially other people's money. And other people's money that we have taken and promised to do something with. The people who do something with the other people's money are called fund managers. So the task of the fund managers is to spend the money. Once you spend the money, you get to wait for this money to deliver a result so that you can pay back to the investors. Now, where can a fund invest the money? Funds invest in everything that can be bought. It could be public equity. These are shares of companies sold on the public exchanges. These could be real estate assets, things that go always up, like the real estate in Switzerland. These could be agricultural land. It could be various types of things where investors can ask to put your money in. Now, what you will see in the box is how the returns of normal funds look like. What you see here, and I need to tell you quickly before you have any other interpretations, is a Gaussian curve or a normal distribution. The normal distribution says if you invest in normal assets such as housing, real estate, public equity, no matter what magic you do, your returns are going to center around a certain mean value. And it's hard to beat it. Okay, so you could do a little bit better, a little bit worse, and this is the percentage of investments that will return the average, and a little bit less of it and a little bit more of it. But roughly the distribution is what we call normal distribution. These are your grades. This is the same distribution like your grades used to get in university. And that, in a sense, is happening because the investments you make have a certain risk profile. And when they are well known and publicly traded or visible, that's what you're going to get. It could be a little bit more or a little bit less than the average of that particular asset class, but that's what you're getting. Now, Let's roll it backwards because we're not talking about a normal fund here. The people you're likely to meet if you look for funding of your startups are people who run particular type of funds called venture funds. Now, what do you think the returns of a venture fund look like? I don't know how to make a polling out of Zoom, but I will start showing you. So this is my venture fund, and this is now the return that I make on my investment in a startup. So if I give them $1 million, am I going to make 0? Am I going to make 1 time the money, 2 times the money, 5 times the money, 10 times the money, or 100 times the money if I found the next Facebook? So where do you think the returns will be clustered? Let's get a poll in the chat box now. Where do you think most of the returns will be? Between 0 and 1, between 0 and 2, 2 and 5, 5 and 10. Okay, this is the percentage of my investments. And this is the return we're gonna get. Is anyone brave enough to vote? Where is this chat box here? Chat box, chat box. Yes.
We have Felix who is saying 0 to 2.
0 and 2, peaking one round out. Okay, very good. Very good. Now, most of the stuff we're going to invest is going to disappear miserably. Some of it may return the money, but most of it will disappear. Some will make small exits. Now, some of it will make big exits, but these will be very, very few. What we call this particular type of curve is the power law. And the power law says, in the world of venture or hyper risky investments, the chances that you are going to lose the money are huge. In fact, the circumstances are totally against you. You're likely to use a major chunk of your money. A minor one may return the money. And there's a once in a huge, very, very little percentage of time that you're going to make a hit that gives you a massive return, times 5, times 10, times 100. So a venture capitalist like myself is in the business of doing what actually? Are we in the business of companies that return the money with some interest? Are we in the business of finding companies that drive profit? Are we in the business of finding companies that can deliver consistent dividends? None of these. The mission of venture capitalists is to find exceptional companies. Our mission is to be able to find those companies that can bring about such returns. Let me give you a slightly different visual to emphasize the same point. Okay, here is my fund. And this is all the money I have. Now, suppose that 1/3 of my fund returns 0. Now, suppose that 1/3 of my fund, more or less, I get to sell you guys to someone who wants to buy you for the same price that I bought you. I gave you $1 million and I told you your company's worth $3 million. You sweat for a couple of years, and then I get to sell you for $3 million to someone and I get my money back. Now, let's poll the chat box again. What should be the return that we need to see from the remaining 1/3 of the companies? 1/3 of the companies are gone without a trace. There's only a logo remaining in the book of dead companies. There is 1/3 of the companies that return their money. That's it. So I'm left with a third of my portfolio. What should be the multiple I get from them in order to save face towards my investors who gave me that money to be managed with in the first place?
Sorry, may I ask, is there a time frame to your question?
Yes, if you don't answer within 10, 15 seconds, then we move on.
No, I meant the return you want from that third.
Oh, the return that I want. Of course, I want a large return, but let's say I would like to at least double the fund within 10 years so that I can, claim I've achieved something.
Okay, that's your time horizon.
We do
That's my
have a
time.
couple of answers here. We have Diego who says between 0 and 1. Then we have Daniel saying between 8 and 10.
Mhm.
And Diego again says between 10 and 100. Laura says at least 2/3. Felix says 2.
At least.
And you are equal but no interest. Jorge says 7 to 10. And then Francesco says, well, 20 times. Maybe you want to multiply your investment 20 times when you.
There you go. So you get the drift of our business. We need companies that make a big return because true, if we have ×2, then we will return the fund without interest, which there's no point to manage the money then. If we do 5 times return on these, then we double the fund, which is kind of okay, but you could achieve the same thing by doing probably hedge funds. And everything above that is rather okay. Now, if that was not 1/3, but it was 1/4 or 10%, then it's even more stacked. So essentially, venture capitalists are, let's take round numbers because we are very simple people. We don't like complicated math, but we look for companies that can do 10x. That's a good guideline. Now, what then is the essence of the job of the VC? The essence of the job of the VC is to look through a large number of applications and try to figure out which ones can do that particular trick. That's all we do. The remainder of our session today will be focused on the selection mechanism or selection instincts, which we apply to figure out what could potentially be that particular breed of companies.
We have a question. Daniel is asking 10x in 10 years or 10x in 5 years?
10x until the exit. And the maximum exit time should be 10 years because most venture funds are structured as 10-year instruments. So from the moment we invest until the moment we sell, which should be 10 years at most, we want to make something like that. That's a good exit. Fine. So now we start thinking about the companies that we want to attract. So how do we think about those companies? Let me give you a macroeconomic perspective on innovation, which I find useful sometimes. It starts with a circle, which is trickier to draw. Here you go. And this particular circle is courtesy of a very famous economist called Schumpeter, an Austrian economist, not a Swiss one, but nevertheless a very good one. And Schumpeter was looking at economic cycles, and he said most of the industries are at any given point in time in any of these points. One of the points is a status quo, where things are stable. You have large operators in these industries, and things are moving along in a kind of very organized way. Now, every once in a while comes a particular type of event. you go. So every once in a while, there are smart people, actually exceptionally smart people, inventors that come up with new stuff. And then we have another breed of people that are very popular these days. And they are written in a French word that I can hardly spell. So what is the difference between an inventor and an entrepreneur? According to our friend Schumpeter.
And
The
entrepreneurs
inventors are more of the scientific. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say an entrepreneur is taking opportunities, and an inventor is just like having the idea, but maybe not taking the opportunity and not doing it. Like, I mean, yeah, an entrepreneur is active.
The entrepreneur is active. Okay, they are active in a particular kind of way. Inventors actually can be very, very active as well. But what's the subtle difference here?
My take would be that they're taking the pulse of the time and the situation, and they go for the opportunities. They're much more opportunistic.
Okay, you said opportunistic, whereas inventors are?
Yeah, kind of lonely wolves doing their stuff somewhere.
Okay, they might be lonely, they might be working in teams, but most of the time inventors are after something that has not been imagined before. So you can think of those people as the crazy scientists. They invent stuff that hasn't been around before. So they have really wild fantasy, if I can exaggerate that. You'll find them in academia, and very often inventions are not practical because they are too far off from the business realities. Then come the particular breed of people we call entrepreneurs, who do not have a wild fantasy like the inventors, but they have imaginations what can be done with that. And it's the entrepreneurs that take inventions and take them into the economic cycle. Otherwise, these inventions will remain in universities for a very long time. But entrepreneurs take out new stuff and apply it into the economy. That has become the model that's so precious today, because there is a large amount of money that rotates in the economy, and this money has to be put to use. Now, you can put your money to use in academia, but that is not likely to generate returns. Nowadays, we have a fetish or an adoration towards bringing new economic ideas with the inventions and new business models into the economy, and that's what entrepreneurs actually do. Now, as you can see, that circle, there is a fourth piece here, which is important to our discussion and to Mr. Schumpeter 100 years ago. And this is the figure of the imitator. Now, what do imitators do?
They take the inventor's work and make it better, or just adapt it in a different context?
Even easier, they take the entrepreneur's work and make it at scale. So if you look at Lyft, they took what Uber had, they tweaked a few things, and you have it. Then you have Via, which tweaked it further, and so on and so forth. So the entrepreneurs make the first move of taking something new into the economy, and then imitators scale it up into a global, huge enterprise. Now, which ones of these four economic type of actors do venture capital people fund with their money? From the previous box.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was asking, back to the venture capitalist with his pot of other people's money. What type of economic actors is the venture capitalist going to put his money in?
We have Diego who says entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs. Good, Diego. You hit one box. Anyone else?
Laura also agrees with Diego.
Okay.
Does it have to be just one?
No?
Well, I guess scaling is very important because it is about the multiplier, right? So I would guess an imitator.
Very
And
true.
Adela says.
Very
yes.
true. They are both targets for venture capitalists because they promise those gigantic returns we were after. Clearly, status quo out of the picture. We will never fund UBS or Swiss Re or even Nestle. That's not required, and they will never bring the returns that we are anticipating. We are also not likely to fund inventors because they carry a lot of science risk, and there's a lot of unknowns whether the technology actually works or not. The kind of risks that venture capitalists underwrite are most of the time related to market risk. And these are the imitators and the entrepreneurs. So when you approach them, you need to have your technology more or less ready and then convince them that the rest of the elements in your puzzle make sense to be funded. Now, suppose that here comes a deck of an entrepreneur in front of us. We've started our venture fund, we've collected our money, and now there is someone who comes and says, I have a brilliant pitch for a startup that does whatever. We're going to disrupt that particular sector. And you start talking. The moment you start talking to a venture capitalist, there is a magic button that you hit in his head. And that magic button is called filtering. So those few first sentences that you're going to say, either verbally or in a pitch, are going to place you in a certain box in his mentality. Now, it's completely your responsibility in what kind of box you want to be put in. If in any way you fail to differentiate for the investor the most important things about your story, then the investor is going to assume them anyway, which is why you want to avoid the investor having to assume anything about your business because you're in the best position to present it. So I really strongly encourage you to take these first interactions, either verbal or deck or a blurb in an email, to say the most important things about yourself in a way that's compelling to the VC because of the way we see the world. So now you know that we're looking for startups that do tremendous promise of returns. And now I have to tell you what is our framework of figuring out whether or not you have the chance against all odds to become one of those companies that return time X. You still with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we are back to the drawing board. And the moment you start talking about your startup, we are thinking in circles. So here is circle number one, and we're going to call this one M. Now, M stands for market. Whatever you do, you will be framing yourself within a particular market, whether it's canned dog food, whether it's industrial IoT, whether it's robotics for paraplegics, whether it's sugar-free bonbons. Anything you say in your first opening sentence has to lead me to understand as clearly as possible what is the market you want to operate in. And again, if you do not make this very clear from the start, I will have to assume that it's X or Y, which is not something you want to leave to chance. So defining the market you operate in as early as possible is a very good time save between you and the investor. Now, what kind of markets is the investor after? Any guesses in the box? And when I say kind of markets, I mean size of the market.
And that one with the most growth, or then intrinsic motivation, where is his interest? But otherwise, I would actually choose, if I want the biggest return of investment, the market with the biggest CAGR.
Okay, return on investment is a complicated concept, but you said something good with growth. What else?
We have Daniel in the chat saying data.
Data. Okay. Even simpler. What kind of market? Big or small? Big or small? Well, I'll take you back. We need to return the money 10 times.
Big and scalable, says Daniel.
That's the point. We need you need to convince the investor that you are in a big market. And when we say big, how big is big? How big is big? 10 million market? Is it big?
Billions.
Billions? Is it big? Yes, billions. Nowadays, more than $1 billion is considered biggish, and a few billions is considered good enough for venture money. Why is the market important to be big? The market has to be big because it is a certain risk factor. Small market does not allow for many players. Small markets are hard to disrupt. Let me give you an example in that point. We recently saw a brilliant startup that offers automation for luxury yacht management. So if you have a super yacht and you need to do a lot of compliance checks and operations and maintenance and so forth, all these luxury yachts need to do that, and somehow it's still done on paper. So these guys designed a brilliant luxury yacht management suite. Did we invest in them? What do you think? Yes or no? Did we invest in the startup that offers luxury yacht management suite? No. Okay, why not?
Because it's
market available to few, very niche.
It's a small market. There is a limited number of super yachts in the world. So how many pieces of this software can we sell? Regardless of the price, this market is capped. So we did not invest in this business. So that's filter number one, which can very easily be applied, and you can see quite quickly whether or not what you have in mind is invest VC scale or not. It doesn't mean that it's bad business. Actually, a lot of businesses, I would say most of the businesses on the planet, are fantastic and profitable, and they are not venture business. Venture business have this requirement for a big market that can somehow underwrite the idea of big and fast growth. And that is something very important to remember. What is big for the venture capitalist? Now, operating in a big market is an important first requirement. You will be placed in a box regarding what the market is within the first few sentences that you speak. So make sure that you define your market pretty well from the start so that you avoid any misunderstanding where you are. The next thing you want to highlight to the investor is, okay, I'm operating in a big market, but if that market works fine, there's no need to do anything in it. Therefore, you need to highlight pretty quickly another important characteristic of the market, which will justify your startup. What is it?
Before we go into this, we have a question from Adela.
Yeah.
Her question is the food and beverage still considered a big market now with COVID? 8 trillion worldwide, bars, pubs, restaurants, etc.
With so that's a good one from Adela, because it reminds me to clarify something. When you define your market, you need to be specific about the chunk of the market you're addressing. Let's call it a total addressable market. So the food and beverage is a gigantic industry, but your startup is not about the entire food and beverage industry. It's in a particular niche. For example, sugar-free sweets, power diet for athletes, any particular niche that you have chosen, that's the one that you need to size for us, not the whole thing. So food and beverage could be hard because people don't want to go to restaurants. So you may want to do home cooking with an app that says what you want to have in your food and deliver it in real time. Why not? People will always need to eat. So food is by definition an endlessly big market. It's just the particular niche that you're choosing and how you frame the story. Now, whatever part of the market you choose, which is big enough, has to have one important issue so that it will need your startup. And that is it takes me to right now. I was looking for a volunteer, but okay. Very good. So when you are talking to the VC, first you reveal the market you're talking about, then you need to make a very clear problem statement. We've seen a lot of startups that have fascinating ideas, but they do not clearly communicate what is the problem they're solving. If you do not clearly communicate to the investor what problem you're solving and why this problem is important, expensive, an issue, they will not move on with you. You will continue talking with your pitch, but they will stay stuck with that idea in their head. Why are they doing whatever they're doing? And this is not a trivial thing. Understanding the problem in the market shows depth. And it's something that we're really keen to look forward to. So understanding the problem in the market and stating that problem clearly is a very, very big part of your job. If you nail the problem right, the rest flows logically. And very often we see pitches that break down in the problem statement, which is understandable. Sometimes people make products without clearly understanding what the problem is. And every once in a while they succeed, but you're more likely to succeed if you can coherently state the issue that you're trying to solve. Now, once we do have the problem clearly stated, we can then move on to the solution that you're offering. Okay, let me start by drawing the circle like this. And we will call this second circle P for product. So whatever the story is, it will evolve into you having a solution to do something. Now, clearly, we want to make sure that this solution matches the problem that you described, and you'll be surprised how often these things are very incoherent. So as you can see, on purpose, I did not link the two circles because it's not a given that these two things will overlap, except in your mind. Now, how do we call the overlapping between the product and market? There's a particular term for it, which is very fashionable these days. I'm sure you've heard it. It combines the two words. So I'm sure you, yeah, I'm sure you.
Product market fit.
Yes, that's the product market fit. So the product and the market fit is the magic thing that distinguishes a startup from something that approaches Series A. how do we prove the product market fit? Even simpler. There's another word that's very popular, which is the best proof of a product market fit.
Is the proof of concept? I'm not sure.
No, it's a one-word word.
No.
Say it again. Having clients. So we call it traction, but that's exactly the same thing. So traction is somehow gaining usage with your product. And traction is either having paying clients, having free subscriptions that can be converted, having proof of concepts, pilots, whatever you want to call it. But we want to see that you have traction, that someone is actually trying to solve the problem you stated with the solution you stated. And that's important because sometimes we see startups that come and say, you know what, we have so many people using our product. But then when we drill in, it turns out that they're using it for something else, not what the startup intended. And that starts to create issues, whether or not you are really understanding the story you're telling. Now, even before the traction comes, what are some important properties of the product that we are trying to figure out as you tell your story?
It has to resolve a customer problem or address a customer problem, fundamentally.
True. So we have to have a feeling that you can address the problem with that particular issue. And how are you going to solve this problem? That's a very key thing.
We have to identify clear target customers, a clear audience.
Okay. If let's take a global example that's going to be very easy to figure out. Suppose that you say people have hard time moving in cities, so I'm going to start a car sharing platform, because in Switzerland we don't have one, so we'll start the car sharing platform. What will the VC think about it? We have a problem, we have a market, we have some kind of product that you want to do, but this product is it innovative? It's imitating, right? So most of the time, VCs want to see that you approach the problem with a solution that's different. And this is a simple but very key point to understanding how VCs treat whatever you tell them. If the product you're offering is more in the imitative section, then it's not a VC problem to solve, at least not an initial VC problem to solve, because imitation takes you into the sphere of scaling up. So imitation is best done with large amounts of money and market access, where you can compete at scale with whoever is in this market already by scaling up and making more cost effective the same business model that we already know that it works. But most of the time in early stage investments, we are looking for solutions that are materially different from whatever else is available on the market. And this is the tricky point for every entrepreneur. You have to convince the people against you that what you do is in some aspect different. We don't call it unique anymore because the entire planet is innovating. So you can't be unique in every aspect, but there's got to be something materially different in how you approach that problem. Now, that difference could be your product, it could be intellectual property, it could be a certain business process, but you have to convince us that this thing is different and is different in a material way. Now, why is it so important to be different than the others?
You can be imitated, and
also in order to get traction.
We are very So in order to get traction, we need to be different. So people need to be convinced that whatever we offer is materially different. And when we say materially different, we have to promise some materially better better outcomes of their problem. So what kind of outcomes do we need to promise to make sure it's a materially different solution? If we offer a 10% increase in something, is it materially different? Most of the time not. We need to make a bold promise of something being dramatically improved. Otherwise, we will be hard pressed to prove our difference. So if we offer a 2-3% improvement on something, most likely VCs will turn away because they will say this is operational effectiveness. It's not true innovation. It cannot bring me times 10 return if I sell it one day. It will bring me 1 point something. So it's not for me.
Miguel has written in the chat, it needs to be better, faster, cheaper, or 10 times better, 10 times cheap, faster, or 10 times cheaper. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, VCs are simple people, so 10 times works good with us. If you say something it's 10 times cheaper, faster, or better, that counts as different. If you just say it's 50% better, that counts as better. It's not really different, so it's not going to move the scale. Now, another question we hear, is it in when you tell your story, what's the role of competition? Do VCs want to hear about your competition, or they prefer that you do not have any competition? What do you think? You're pitching your startup in whatever vertical you chose, and you tell me that there's no competitor in this field. What am I thinking on the other hand?
Daniel is writing, what is the traction that makes you as a VC start thinking? Percent of costs, 50%. Oh, the chat box is moving. Wait a second. Oh yeah, 50%, 100%, 150%. So how much are you attributing to scaling?
What is the traction that makes you as a VC start thinking? Percent of cost, 50%, 150. I would say here it has to be something in the times X improvements. So depending on the context of your story, if it's industrial, we would be taking a little bit less as viable too. But if it's consumer startup in any way, then it has to promise 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times improvements. Oh, competition. So Miguel is saying, yes, competition salary, okay. No competition, VC things that you didn't know. Okay, very good. So we all agree that you need to say there is competition. That's very true. If there's no competition, it means essentially there is no market, because nobody else figured out that there is a market to chase the money after, and we are suspicious. So there should be competition, but you have to be materially different from that competition. So don't be afraid of the competition theory, but do state how you are different than the major players in this industry, whether they're established or newcomers. We want to know all about it. We're not scared of competition. We want it to be there. And that's yet another reason why we like big markets. Big markets can absorb different competitors from different angles, and eventually there will be a buyer for not just the winner, but a number of companies in the same field as well. Very good. Now I'm going to draw the third and final almost circle here. And we are going to call that final circle team. So you've been telling me your story, and I have figured out in what market you want to play in. You've told me about the product. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, you made a reference earlier about what really makes that USP materially different, and there are comments here. I don't think we've come to the end of that, or at least I probably didn't crystallize that. Miguel, for instance, says better, cheaper, faster. I'm just throwing something I picked up in the last week. It's a Seth Godin statement around it isn't anymore about better, faster, cheaper. It's far more about storytelling. Have you got any views around that?
Oh yeah. So better, faster, cheaper in itself is not a recipe for VC, because that's operational improvement. Better, faster, cheaper times 10, that means materially different. So you're not, you can do better, faster, tuning shop and, getting some things squeezed out of your car. But doing better, cheaper, faster 10 times means that you need to get a Bugatti, because otherwise, you can't squeeze it out of the old stuff. And that's what different refers to. Now, Seth Godin and storytelling, it's about the packaging. So you can make it smoother for the VC to understand or harder, but we are very well trained in figuring out what's behind your story. So whether you tell it in a good way or a bad way, we will find it out. What's important is for you to make these three components clearly understandable for the VC so that he does not misinterpret them, which will be to your disadvantage. Now, you cannot tell the story in a way to cheat the VC. So if you don't have a story and you try to have a story, most chances are that you'll be called and it will not fly. Having said that, you have things like WeWork and Theranos that were, just great stories, but nothing much. And it took a few billions to come to the light of the day, that there's actually not much behind it. Now, okay. So here's the story. Now we're putting the third circle back there, the team. So here comes a startup to us from London, and they said, we have a great system for authentication. It's something that hasn't been done before. We're going to kick the other guys in the butt who do authentication for fintech devices. It has very particular cryptology that does it 10 times faster, it's more secure. Say, fine. Who's on the team? And they said, okay, we have this person and that person and that person. And I asked them, okay, who wrote the code of this brilliant encryption? And they said, well, it's a guy who's in academia and he's not on the team, but he's ready to help us whenever we are interested to do something with him. How does the VC feel about that?
He would probably straight go to the developer. Because that's the asset, like that's a skill set he wants to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
I thought.
Mm-hmm. You see the chart in front of you. Every company has a team that drives it, and that team is composed of several individuals, hopefully. Now, these individuals for us fall roughly into two buckets of people. You see that the team I drew does not coincide with either circle yet. So one type of people in the company are the people that make the product. How do we call that overlapping between product and team? Same idea like the other one.
We call it team product fit. Team product fit.
That's the team product fit. So if you have on your team people who are technically able to build the product, that's a good thing. It's essential, actually, because startups never have enough money. You always have to put in free work. So if you're attempting to make a startup, but technical delivery is somehow outsourced to external factors, that's an issue for the VC, because the VC knows that startups is a lot of pain, a lot of sleepless nights. And if the team that builds the product is not in the startup and is not motivated for its long-term success, but it's just paid hires, you have a serious issue. So having a technical co-founder is important. But what's even more important than that? What's even more important than that is the last missing bit of the picture. As you can see on the team, we really want to see people who understand the market that you are attacking. For example, the luxury yacht guys, they were perfectly structured because they had engineers that built the software, and they had people who have been selling luxury boats for the better part of their adult lives. So when they talk to me about luxury boats, I feel confident that they know what they're saying. And conversely, the people who came to us with the authentication software for banks did not sell anything to banks before. So whatever they said, I did not have the confidence that somehow they can find these banks and sell them what they had to. These are the things that we VCs are very good at. And when you present your team slide, this is not just a number of pictures. These pictures have to tell a story. To use the Seth Godin methodology, you've got to have a picture here, and you need to have a picture here. That's a strong team setup. Now, as you can see, the hole in the middle is pretty small. And if we go back to what VC does most of their time, we are filtering applications that hit that middle point right there. Now, when we look at the deck, where do you think the deck fall on this prism or framework that's on the screen? We look at a deck of company. Where does it go? Do you see the little dots on the screen? Can you see the dots I'm making on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so each dot is a deck that we are reviewing. And obviously, just like we saw in the beginning, most of these things do not fit the venture capitalist framework of mind. They are just not, it's hard to hit the middle point. Now, how do you, once you send your deck to a VC, how do you know where you are on the map? And that's probably the last thing I'm going to tell you, and then I'm open for questions. How do you know where the VC placed you in his mental map? You shoot the deck to him, and then what happens?
You get a call, you get some questions, they're interested. You're in the
Okay, okay. That's a good thing. What else can happen? If you're fundraising, you will experience silent death over time. Many VCs will not respond. Now, the response time of the VC to your deck most of the time indicates where you are on the map. If the VC responds very quickly, what does it mean?
They're interested?
Yes, if you are right here in the middle, chances are that we will spot that pretty fast and we'll get back to you and start talking. What else can be the reason that we respond very fast?
It may be close. You want to hear validation to get you closer to that middle. You haven't quite.
Is that a fast? So here in the middle, in the red, we have a fast yes. What else could we have? A fast what? If we have a fast yes, chances are that we can also get a fast no. And if you get a fast no, it means that you are somehow pretty far off that center. So it was very easy decision why it does not fit the thesis of that particular fund. And then sometimes you get silence. And if you get silence, it means that you're somewhere here. You are circling around the goal, but you're not exactly there. And you might get a phone call after a while. They might tell you that you need to get bigger. They might tell you that you need to improve your technology, that you need to hire someone, that you need to state the market better. You'll hear all kinds of stories, but essentially, you know that you did not hit the mark and there's something that needs to be improved so that you do get fundable. That is what we spend most of the time in. And that I find probably one of the most important things for startups to figure out before they engage with the VC so that the interaction can be optimized for both sides. So now I am very open for your questions.
Just a question right to that. Sorry to jump in. So now we got. Pardon me?
I was reading the last question. Do you always give feedback, or it can be indefinite silence? It can definitely be indefinite silence depending on the load on the venture capitalist. sometimes we receive a lot of requests and they just cannot be processed on time. Probably the best way to reach a VC is through a warm introduction, because cold calls are so many that chances are it will be ignored, or just they'll never get to it. But when your deck arrives through a introduction, then of course we pay attention and we give some feedback to the best of our abilities, which can be concise, but it's always within the same framework that we discussed between the lines.
I have two questions for you, Daniel, if I may.
Sure. Go ahead.
You mentioned the intro, the first seconds. As you fill in the room with your startup or whoever you have on the other side, you may have a very, very quick, empathetic connection. I'd love to have any tips you have on how. And there's probably no magic formula for this, but any good icebreakers to break that tension and get off to start off a good conversation. Secondly, you gave us obviously a very good explanation about the market, the reasoning, the numeric side of an investment from a VC perspective. I come from banking, although I'm trying to do something completely different, and I see how I think the world is moving towards a wider investment view, not solely driven by numbers, but by I'm gonna use a more liberal ESG type set of filters. How does a VC look at other attractive features of a startup? So I'm going to use a very bad example, but I could have an amazing drug product that will give you multiples. I know that's a bad example, but I can have a very unethical product that could give you huge returns. Or I could have a product that hits all the boxes and maybe is still profitable, maybe not in the numbers you're looking for. Is there any changes in the VC world around how you value impact investments and wider looking enterprises that are still profit seeking, yet not just trying to hit the numbers, so to speak?
That is easy to find out about each and every fund that you are addressing with your pitch. And that's part of your research, because every fund is structured with a set of documents that define its investment policy very clearly. There is no point in trying to interest a purely commercial fund with an ESG driven investment, because in their metrics, the only thing they need to do is to multiply the return for their investors. There is no other driver. There is no other incentive. Therefore, it may be a good idea, but it will be measured and sized against all the others. Conversely, today you have an emerging and an increasing number of funds of various types who make a point of investing in ESG opportunities. So they want you to be profitable.
Quick explanation for those who don't know. What is ESG?
Environment, social, and governance.
Thank you so much.
So do good type of investments.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So you need to be sure that the fund you're addressing has that.
Thank you.
That will be an advantage for you for those type of funds.
What about the icebreaker? What makes you feel comfortable on the VC side of the table?
Oh, don't worry about it. We are actually comfortable. It's more about you on the other side. So some investment teams like to put you on an edge and try to get you off your game. Others try to make you as comfortable as possible, because at the end of the day, we want to see your best ability, and we are after investing in the best startups. So we want to get out of you the best you have. So that's mostly about the team that's on the other side of the table. But either way, if you have a good story that fits the framework, it will get through eventually.
Thank you.
We have a lot of questions in the chat. Can you please unmute yourselves and ask them?
Some VCs will exchange the team. So how does that fit with the team story? That's something that can happen in a more advanced stage of a startup. particularly if the founding team is not performing at their best, but the company is still growing forward. And it's kind of a normal life cycle, because people who start a company with an idea are not necessarily the good managers. And when your team reaches 100 and more, very likely those same founders will no longer be fit to operate that organization. And then investors in the company will consider at the board replacing the founders and putting them on president positions or chief technologist positions, and hiring professional management to do whatever it's done. But typically it happens later, and nothing to be worried about at the initial stage. Definitely do not change founders at the beginning of a company. If there is anything like that in your terms, that's very suspicious.
We haven't. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question regarding the COVID impact. What was the impact on you guys on the VC side?
Initially, we were shell-shocked, but then it turned out that a lot of businesses who drive digital for various type of industries are actually thriving. And today you see venture returning and starting to pump money again into property tech, ed tech, med tech, everything that deals with remote service provision is just exploding.
Do you have personally like more favorite area of investments? I mean, independently from the VC that you represent.
For our VC is a generalist fund, so we fund without restriction on different verticals. I recently made my first investment in education technology, and it feels wonderful. So I'm guessing education technology and medical technology are fantastic, because you're both driving your commercial goals, but you also feel good that you're doing something positive. That has been a new feeling for me, and I cherish that.
What's your like educated guess regarding all these innovations that show up in the world of mental health?
That there are a lot of mentally sick people, more than anticipated.
No, but like, do you see a future for those startups? Or it's more like an area that not necessarily will have something being coming? From what you've seen probably so far in terms of startups applying.
I have to be honest that startups on mental health have not reached us, as opposed to startups who deal with more tangible conditions such as chronic pain or paraplegics, orthopedics, dentistry. These are the things that we have seen, and there is so much space for digital improvement there that we are just scratching the surface. I guess mental health is no exception, which is not something that I've had experience with.
And one last one. I asked this question because in the incubator, we are together with several projects that tackle mental health, as opposed to ours. There is more about dining. You know, dining is a huge issue at the moment. And dining out, not the same experience as all the time being at home. Have you had startups applying on this kind of solutions? How to make going out safer again?
Not yet. Not yet. We are yet to see those. If they're purely digital, then it's an immediate venture interest. If they involve a physical element like disinfection or paper or bacterial things, then ventures always hesitate, because the physical things tend to be physical and harder to scale. So we are double careful, but yeah, COVID will be an opportunity around many of those.
Okay, good to know. We might contact you then.
Okay, guys. Anyone else? Have we left anything unclear? I'm sure you can drop me a note if you have any
we have a question from Daniel. He would like to know, how do you measure or rate environmental, social, the G standard, what did the G stand for? ESG, the environmental governance. Okay, so how do you measure economic social governance?
I wouldn't even dare to try and think about it because we do not. But we hear about increasing number of funds, and especially the larger ones like pension funds and asset allocators who do have means of measuring such impact. So there must be methodologies around it who can somehow define whether your startup is in that direction. Most likely they should be able to tell you about it.
Thank you. We have another question from Miguel, and he asks, what's the average time between sending a pitch deck
and signing the agreement?
Yes.
So that depends where are you on the chart. If you are right in the middle, then you should look at a fast execution. If you are somewhere in between, then the VC will want to see a progress on your end before they engage. Now, the VC needs to give you something called a term sheet, which is an indication of intent to invest in your company. And from the moment you have the signed term sheet between yourselves and the venture capital, it's purely execution time to do some due diligence, finalize the documents and sign it. That should take probably within a month or so. Sometimes it takes a bit longer because term sheet involves getting other investors on board. So investor says, you want to raise 1 million, I'll give you half. Here's the term sheet, go and find the other half. And then it's up to you again to, how long it takes you to physically raise the remaining capital. So yeah, soft question with a soft answer.
I've got a question to exact that spread of how good you actually fit the VC's brain. Okay, so if we now got kind of like a slow answer, then we know obviously something is wrong. Are you usually giving feedback to what you don't like? Probably not, right? You just extend the final answer a bit, but how could we actually sense what's missing to then trigger that again?
They should essentially. We strive to make that point. Whether everybody does it, I am not sure, but typically there will be a line saying why they did not invest. And it could be something that says, well, you're not in our geography, your round is too small, your round is too big, which are generic excuses. They didn't want to get into more detail, but you didn't fit the very basics. And then if these are okay, they might say, well, we think your traction is too small, we think your team is inadequate, we think your product is very competitive, so there are a lot of imitators, it will be hard to differentiate. There will be pointers, market something, product something, team something.
Okay, yeah, good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Guys, drop me any other questions that you might have because I need to.
Miguel has a quick question. Do you have time for one more question or not?
Yes, one more.
So how many VCs to contact for one who invests?
Oh, don't be shy. You can contact easily 100, but they have to be well qualified. There's no point in contacting those that explicitly state what they invest in. So if you are into seed and you want to raise 1 million, don't go after the growth VCs. If you are in Switzerland, then don't chase the ones who are in the US unless you want to move there immediately. But if you have well qualified VCs, there's no limit on them. Should address all of them if you ask me. And try to do it through a warm recommendation, not a cold email. Try to meet them somewhere at event, virtual or field. But cold emails are very often received with cold shoulder.
I know that you have to go. Thank you so much for this insightful view into what are you thinking, how are you doing your business. It has been really very, very special. And I'm so happy you did manage to come and join the Versus Virus Incubatees and to share all your knowledge. Thank you so much. Daniel, we really appreciate, right?
Likewise, guys. I thank you for the invitation and good luck with your startups.
Thank you so much. For the rest of us, I would like to let you know what is coming. So, as you know, we are approaching slowly but surely Demo Day, which is going to be on the 9th of November. And this is just a couple of weeks ahead, right? So, things are intensifying. You need to learn a little bit more. So, we have some additional lunch and learn sessions for you because we are working with what you requested. So first of all, we have Simon Bremer coming on Wednesday, or let me correct, on Wednesday from 12:15 to 1:15. And Simon will share with you his understanding of why winning differentiators are authentic. So if you have not managed to bring the authenticity yet into your deck, into your pitch, please join this session. It's going to be on Wednesday, October 21st from 12:15 to 1:15. Next, on Friday, next Friday, we will be taking the acceleration session, which starts at 8:15 and finishes at 9 o'clock. And we will be inviting Adela she's a marketing expert, and she would really show you how to know your user target. Because as you know, it's really important when you pitch to know that you know and love your user, right, Adela? If you have not nailed this down yet, please join next Friday, 8:15 in the morning. It will be a 20-minute session plus a Q&A. And then our very last session for the Versus Virus Incubator will be delivered by our very own tech guru, who is always here for us, Daniel Dabush. He will be talking about team management, principles used by high-performance teams in NASA, CERN, and the aviation. So next Friday, the same time, the same place, come and hear and learn how to manage your teams. Well, that's all from us. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for watching. And keep up the great work that you're doing. Bye, everybody.